So, well, let's get into like some more practical
Sure.
stuff. Like what would you say to somebody who is trying to forge a career in music now? What does it really mean to have a career in music now?
I mean, to make a living at all is still, in the percentage of the population is pretty rare still. To make a really good, even upper middle class living, which is sort of, I feel like, where I'd personally put myself, although I don't know. I'm not an economist, but it's really hard. Um, it's not impossible, certainly, but it takes a certain type of mental fortitude. I would say more than a type of personality, because I feel like I'm pretty introverted, actually. So when I feel like a lot of people will tell you like, oh, you got to be super type A and go getter. And I know a lot of people in the music industry that are quiet and humble and to themselves, and they're killers, and they make a great living and they're incredible musicians. But there's sort of two sides to that coin. I feel like a few years ago, if you asked me that, I would say get to a large city as fast as you can. Get to where the industry is on the ground, um, which would be a New York, and LA, and Nashville, London, something like that, Toronto. Um, Now it's interesting because of the prevalence of something like TikTok, which I'm not a huge fan of personally, but you can reach so many people instantaneously. However, the caveat being that that sort of isolates a lot of people too. You can make a lot of videos in your bedroom and learn how to play guitar from YouTube, but I would still say if you want to, if your goal is to eventually go on tour with Taylor Swift, you have to go to a city where the Taylor Swifts of tomorrow are getting signed and making records, and where their bands are being put together. And there's still only a few cities in the world where that is really the case.
Does Taylor Swift usually recruit out of Nashville?
Yeah, and she's had
Okay.
her band for a long time. Most of her band she's had for a really long time.
Does she live there?
Sort of part-time, I think. I think she has a
Okay.
Tennessee driver's license, although I don't know for sure.
I mean so usually it's like do most of the biggest acts recruit out of Nashville these days? Or is it mixed?
It's mixed. I would say it's majority LA and Nashville for sure, depending on what side of the country you're living on, what type of music you're doing. There's a bit of New York mixed in, but I feel like the New York people sort of, it's New York by way of Nashville or New York by way of LA. Most tours are launching from Nashville or Los Angeles in terms of like crew and transportation, buses, things like that.
I mean, Nashville always just makes the most sense because you're just smack dab in the
Right,
middle.
exactly. It's the best sort of centrally located point to launch from.
It's a great place to be a road comic, and
Mhm.
more people are realizing that because there's more and more comedians out of Nashville now than ever before. And part of that is because a couple heavy hitters live in town,
Mhm.
but it's also people are just realizing like, oh, this is I think Todd Snyder. Well, I'm sure a lot of people have said some variation of this, but I most famously have always heard it from Todd Snyder. This is the city. Nashville's the city where you can really do the weekends
Mhm.
because you're just so
Well,
close to a million
and
different places.
the music is the music industry, or the touring industry, I should say, is identical to that. It's There are certainly, if you're a massive stadium act, um, you're going to be gone for 9 months, or whatever, 6 weeks at a time. But the vast majority of tours out of Nashville occur on the weekends, which makes it sort of a unique thing in the industry where you can have, you can be tethered to some semblance of a normal life because you get to be home Monday through Thursday, and you get to sleep in your own bed more than, 3 days a month.
Yeah. So continuing shop talk for a little bit
Mhm.
because this is like it is so fun to see the parallels between music and comedy. So I know that, and again, this is from being your friend and knowing you guys and stuff. Like I know that there are just straight up open jam nights, open mic nights. And some of them are just people playing cover songs, having fun. Some of them are like, there's probably someone hanging out here who might be able to give you a job.
Mhm.
When someone wanders into Nashville, how do they figure out which is which?
Downtown used to be, I mean, it still is pretty tourist heavy. The difference now is that you can really work if you work on the Broadway circuit, which is like the heavy cover band circuit. You can make a lot of money if you get into one of the right clubs, but that can become a double-edged sword or sort of a golden handcuff situation. I'd say at this point, the longest standing institution for the type of thing that you're talking about is a thing called Whiskey Jam. And I think it started the year I moved to town. Ironically, they have now moved that event into a venue downtown in the morass of the tourist area,
Oh, interesting.
um, which we'll see how that plays out long term. But Whiskey Jam essentially highlights, you know, only original unsigned music, and they can be people. I've seen people literally passing through town, that you've never heard of. Like they're a family band from North Florida, and they're on their way to play some fair in Indiana, and they stop by for a night in Nashville and play 3 songs at Whiskey Jam. But it has birthed the career of many, many kind of modern day superstars out of Nashville, and I feel like it's almost not quite a rite of passage, but if you are new to town and you do anything, not just, songwriters for sure, but if you're an artist, if you're looking to be a player in a band, you're looking to be a hired gun session people, this is sort of the inception point, I guess you would say. It's the first place that I would go to meet people that also just moved to town that are trying to do the thing you're doing. Almost like a I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like a famous comedy club open mic night. We've heard a million stories about some of the most legendary comics all sort of being peers at the same time, coming up together, practicing jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think a good parallel would be a place like the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
When you first, especially if you're in LA, when you first get to town, you just start going to the Comedy Store and you
Mhm.
try to like find your lane.
Yep.
I think the one kind of caveat is like there are eventually things kind of fragment off depending on if you really want to be a writer or if you only
Right.
want to do stand up or if you want to do, if you want to go more the acting route. Like there's all these little like eventually kind of subsections off. But well, what about the Bluebird? Is the Bluebird or did the TV show
there.
kind of change?
I don't know. I feel like the TV show helped the Bluebird from a tourist marketing standpoint,
Sure.
but maybe is not as indicative of reality in 2023. The Bluebird, excuse me, it's still there, certainly. It's funny because it's smack in the middle of the strip mall that you would never expect to find a venue like that. In my estimation, and I don't go there very often anymore, so I could be wrong, but it feels like it sort of caters to more established songwriters who are not, people that already have hits that have a free night to go share their work with people from out of town. Maybe caters to a little bit of an older crowd. They'll still do, new act kind of nights, but it's the fact that by way that it's not in town, like it's not in the city per se, it's in Green Hills, which is 20 minutes outside of town in a suburb, makes it a little less foot trafficky than something like Whiskey Jam.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting to me. Well, then it's just, have you ever noticed? Because, like, I'll say this: I have been. This has only happened to me one time in my life, and I'll even say the situation. It was at an Americana Fest, which is a big music festival in
Mhm.
Nashville. That's actually an awesome. I would love going to that. But it was the only time in my life I was genuinely embarrassed to be in an audience for something. And it was because Jay Farrar of Sunvolt
Mhm.
was doing the Sunvolt album Trace in its entirety solo by himself. And it was like a big event. They were like, Jay Farrar's going to do Trace. And you would think that it was just some like cover act in the middle of a strip mall who was not doing a very good job or something. I mean, people were just talking, and it was like your cliche of people exchanging business card. Well, Jay Farrar's, and he was getting visually ticked off. He was like kind of look like, I think a couple times he tried to walk off and they wouldn't let him walk off. and I'm like, dude, this is what's wrong. This is what are you guys? What's wrong with all of you? All of you apologize and start behaving right now. I'm not comfortable. Like it was just so, but that's the sort of Nashville thing where it's like when it comes to music, they've seen it all. And
that is a real thing. That is it's almost become a meme.
Yeah. Well, artists will skip the city because of
that. Yeah, there is the sort of meme of, you know, a Nashville crowd is just a sort of, you know, a sea of blank faces with crossed arms, right?
But they're still polite afterward.
Yeah. They're listening intently, but they don't clap much, and they're not, you know, they seem, there's like a heavy level of disinterest, even if they are, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe oversaturation, or like you're saying, like we've seen it all, you know. We've got music 24/7 here in 1,700 different venues. Like, okay.
And to an extent, I get it because, you know, like anywhere else, like similar how like LA or New York is with comedy, the good is amazing. The bad is, oh my God. So like, I get it when you're surrounded all the time, but it's still, there's this artist that I like called Beans on Toast. He was actually the first episode of the show.
I listened to the episode,
He has an episode, a song called "Fuck You Nashville," and it's all about like that experience. Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's pretty funny. But he talks about you know, how he had a bad experience, and he's had good experiences since. He's a very, you know, polite, diplomatic guy. Like he's totally, and he'll play that song in Nashville. And they kind of appreciate it. But he was talking about his first experience in Nashville, and I'm like, oh yeah. And then it's funny, on the drive home, my friend who came with me, my buddy Drew, we were kind of talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, man, there's some truth in what he was saying, though. Let me tell you this Jay Farrar story. And it's like, so yeah, the Nashville crowds, man. I mean, does it make you work harder?
Maybe a little bit. Definitely when my band, The Love Electric, was more active, when Victor still lived in Nashville, I sort of feel like we would, I don't know, everybody, all parties involved are obsessed with Springsteen to a degree. So, but we would kind of like have this mentality like we're going to war, even if it was a tiny club, you know, on 8th Avenue or something. But it would, I mean, it would sort of inspire you to, you know, I'm going to make somebody listen. I'm going to make somebody not necessarily like me, but I'm going to make them physically react because they're just sitting there with their eyes crossed, you know, or their arms crossed and their eyes rolled, you know, like, oh God, you know.
Oh, look at all these people with dreams and goals. So annoying.
Yeah, I know. It really is, though.
So plug away, man. Where can people go to find your stuff?
So most of my stuff is anti songs. Instagram is probably where I'm most active on social media, at anti_songs with a Z, SONGZ. Antisongs.com. That's with an S. I'm sorry. I think the other one was taken. I can't remember. Either of those, pretty much, you can find me anywhere else using those as a landing platform.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
Dude, absolutely, man. I mean, you have always been one of my best friends and still are. And you've been, I mean, you know, we don't need to get into specifics right now, but you literally were there for me at my worst moment in my life that hopefully will go down as the worst moment. I hope I don't pass it up. But I mean, yeah, you were there for me in a way that I will never forget and will always be incredibly just gracious for. And I hope I never have to repay the favor at that level.
Yeah,
But if I ever do,
yeah,
of course I
yeah.
will. You
You're
know
gonna be
it.
my first call.
You got it, dude. You got it. You got it. So yeah, like thank you for that.
Of
And
course.
yeah, man, you've always been an inspiration. Whenever I just sometimes whenever I just want to take it easy, I think about you and I'm like, I probably shouldn't. I probably should try to
I don't know, you
at least write a page.
yeah, maybe a page a day or whatever they say, right?
That's I mean, hey, that's pretty good. And I try to, I try to write something, at least something kind of like what you're saying, like I'm doing music in some capacity. I try to write
Yeah,
something every day. Sometimes it's just working on a script, sometimes it's just like one joke that the next day I'm like that joke sucks,
yeah.
but something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a muscle, right? I mean, it's such a cliche, but it is kind of, you know, as long as you don't quit the race, that's the whole point.